some of these other DeSantis stands, like, they're just fighting so hard. And, like,
Ross
watching...
Delpit, please run, please.
I mean...
Hello and welcome to the Next Level Podcast. I'm Tim Miller in the captain's chair with my best buddies, Jonathan Victor Last of the Bulwark and Sarah Longwell, publisher of the Bulwark. How you doing, guys?
Hello, Tim.
Oh, Tim. Hey, you want to know something?
Today.
Yeah, let's do it.
I found a picture of Tim and his not yet husband at the time from my East Coast wedding party, and they are just like, it's babies. I was just looking at Tim's face and thinking, like, we're just aging together in this.
And Tyler, like, weighed 102 pounds soaking wet, and now he's like a muscle man. It's been a full metamorphosis. I think I probably look the same, but you know, maybe you think I look like a baby. I don't know. It's just in the eye of the beholder, I guess.
Yeah.
Guys, over at Charlie's podcast, daily podcast, which we love and everyone should be listening to, he offers little palate cleanser sometimes for people at the top. And since I'm driving, I went to copy Charlie. And since I live in New Orleans now, instead of calling it a palate cleanser, I'm going to call it a little lagniappe. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but I'm embracing New Orleans culture like JVL's embracing Broadway. And so a little lagniappe. I don't know if you've seen this from the Florida legislature. Let's just do it live here. And for people not listening on the podcast, you might want to go over to YouTube because the faces are pretty important here. Sebastian, give us a play.
Like we never usually do. We bombed it because they threw homosexuals off that building. Our terrorist enemies hate homosexuals more than we do. They're the ones who discriminate. Our job in the military, our Navy creed, I am committed to excellence and fair treatment of all. That's what we learn in boot camp. That's what we drill into ourselves each and every day while we're in boot camp. Please vote up on this bill.
That is so good. Representative Kelly Skidmore there, proudly serving District 92 in Boca Raton, Florida in the background. We hate killing homosexuals. They hate homosexuals more than we do.
Even more than we do.
And we hate them a lot. We just don't hate them, throw them off a building a lot.
Quite a bit. You can't mention them in 12th grade in Florida, but we do not want to throw them off the building like our enemies. That was just such a nice synthesis of our 2 decades of aging together, Sarah, in culture war. You know, it's like the Islamists are the real homophobes. We're just we're homophobe light. Like
no,
Bud
we
Light.
hate. We hate. We just hate slightly less. I loved her face.
So
where
what's going on with that woman who's sitting behind the speaker?
That's what
there?
I'm saying. That is Representative Kelly Skidmore of District 92. That is her sitting behind the other rep.
That's her. Okay.
I forget the bigot's name. I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying. She is sitting there listening to her colleague, just like the woman was too shocked to speak. She was like, "What? What is this guy saying?"
Wait, can we do a quick body language recap on this? Because here's what's great about it, right? So he says it. Her mouth drops open. She cannot believe he said it. Her mouth stays open. He slowly realizes what he's just said. You have to be watching really closely, but you hear his voice hit that, just hit a little gauge of oh no, I said it out loud. I wasn't supposed to say it like that. And then you see her do this thing where she looks around the room other people heard this too, right? I'm not alone in just hearing this insane thing.
But
That's
she is
perfect.
alone in understanding the insane thing. She looks like, you remember Office Space? One of the great comedies of our time, featuring
British or
one
US?
Of the great walk-off performances of all time from a little-known actor named Greg Pitts, who comes in and plays Drew, who is the office buddy who does the bone coaster bit. And she looks like she's making the bone coaster O face. It's amazing.
British was the answer.
The O face. Okay. Anyway, we'll get back to Florida in another week. It'll be funny to talk about there. My party is going to be about the craziness happening in the Florida legislature. So it was just a little side clip I got as doing the research for it. I want to talk about what Republican voters want in 2024. Rather than getting as much into the horse race. JVL, you did a nice triad about it yesterday that I'm assuming Sarah did not read. So
I read it.
Oh, you did great.
I always read it.
Did you notice the note I included in it for you?
A test
Did
is
I
a little.
read it?
A test is a little.
I read it. I skimmed
rude.
it.
Because I in fact had a whole number of people comment about how amusing they thought it was that I had tucked in the note addressed to you within the triad,
Can you just
knowing
just
full
give
well
me a
that you
hint?
would not read it.
Just give me a hint. What did it say?
It literally says, "Hi, Sarah."
At which part?
The part you didn't
It was
read.
a long triad. It was a long triad.
I think this is true. I think I read them all a little bit. Like I just
like
can't
Oslo.
always.
I'm like the student who tucks in, the first paragraph of the Gettysburg Address on page 16 of his 25-page term paper just to see if the teacher is awake.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. So, Jay, well, why don't you just brief us then, JVL? Give us the TLDR, just in case somebody didn't read it.
So the CBS and YouGov did a poll asking likely Republican primary voters what it is they most want from their presidential nominee. And the answers were that they want somebody who will oppose wokeness.
Boom, 85%. Highest rating.
Somebody who will say that Donald Trump won in 2020.
61%, third highest rating.
What was number 2 on the list?
Second
there,
was
Tim?
oppose any gun restrictions.
Any gun restrictions, right? And then the fourth number in the 4 hole, make liberals angry. And as a buddy of mine said, boy, cutting taxes is great, but have you ever pissed off a liberal? Oh, right. This is inside the mind of Republican voters.
But cutting taxes wasn't on the list, right? That wasn't offered up as an option.
I guess not.
It is true. I do have a critique of the poll.
Yes.
Which is that they gave a series, which is kind of telling about where the party is right now, which is they gave the series of questions, which is, are you looking for a candidate who does, and then these series of issues. And wants to cut taxes was not one of the ones that they proposed. That said,
Do you have it in front of you?
I think it's a pretty nice synopsis of do you have what the other options are? I do not. JBL, why don't you give your riff while I pull up what the other options were?
Well, I mean, the most important thing about this is that none of this requires governing power, right? You can fight wokeness or oppose wokeness by simply saying stuff. You can oppose wokeness on Twitter. Ron DeSantis has tried, his great innovation is trying to figure out a government policy agenda for opposing wokeness. Almost all of it seems to get struck down by the courts because it's not actually constitutional. That's beside the point. I think voters are just as happy to have people oppose wokeness by saying stuff. You support Donald Trump having won the presidency by simply saying it. You make liberals angry by simply talking or tweeting. Now, the gun stuff, you would actually have to vote against a piece of legislation if it happened. But that's how you oppose gun reforms and gun restrictions. And so ultimately what I was suggesting is that it strikes me, everybody's like, well, Republicans really want someone who can win. I'm not sure that's true. Because it seems to me that a failed presidential candidate could satisfy these desires much more completely than a successful governor or senator could. And a successful presidential candidate, if he had to moderate on some of these things, I think might not be very attractive to Republicans.
Tim, did you find them?
have it, and I think this is key. 'Cause it's kind of related to I did my DeSantis Elizabeth Warren bit last week, which was that he's getting too far down the rabbit hole on some of these specific issues. Where you do have to actually do stuff on policies, and the numbers here bear that out. Supports U.S. aid to Ukraine. That is the second lowest number of Republicans care about that. The lowest would cut spending on Social Security. So Trump has won that argument, when it comes to Social Security. Even the national abortion ban comes in below making liberals angry. So taxes and regulations weren't included on that. So open dialogue on whether Republican voters will have to do another follow-up poll on whether Republican voters care about that more or less than making liberals angry. But we know that they care less about entitlement reform, abortion, and a strong foreign policy against the commies than they do about making liberals angry and this amorphous fight against woke. And I think this is where DeSantis has gone wrong a little bit when it comes to just the Florida legislative agenda. which is the 6-week abortion ban, like these very prescriptive, like social issues, where he's trying to pass policies on. And that's like not really what the folks are voting for. He was better positioned as liberals hate me because I veered a different direction on COVID. Liberals hate me because, when I say things on Fox that get them upset, right? The woke people hate me, and when when the details weren't really filled in. I don't know. Sarah, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to something JVL said about how,
Sure.
people don't want to move on. And I think that's not quite right? I think there is a chunk of the party that wants to move on. And as I've been, and I've talked a lot about this, written a lot about this, because the focus groups, especially in that period from about the January 6th committee, which is when I saw it really starting, which coincided with the Ron DeSantis media boomlet, that's when people started to say, I think Trump has too much baggage. I think we need somebody else. And I think it should be this Ron DeSantis guy. That accelerates after the 2022 midterms, where Ron DeSantis wins by 20 points and Donald Trump has a massive failure in his endorsements. And everybody comes out and says this guy's a loser. And everyone thinks Trump's too weak to win. And you start to see a big chunk of the party say, we need somebody who's electable. We need to move on. And we like Ron DeSantis. Then what happens? And I think this point that you just made about, I've always said this about DeSantis. It's not about who Ron DeSantis hates. It's about who hates Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, that's right.
That is his power. Okay? Now, here's the problem, is that now it's Trump, though, who hates Ron DeSantis, and that presents a real conundrum. But also, DeSantis is getting attacked by the media, whatever, for his legislative agenda. But Trump's getting indicted, right? And there's a pathology on the right that says the one that they're going after the hardest, right? They go after Donald Trump because they're afraid of Donald Trump. And so that means that Donald Trump is the guy we should go with, because that's who they're most afraid of. That's who they're trying to make sure we can't vote for. That's who they're trying to get rid of. And the other thing I'll just say is that I've started to really dig into, in the focus groups, called the diploma divide, college educated versus non-college educated. And there's a big difference. So the college educated folks are the ones who will talk sometimes about policy. Right. And at minimum understand, like, have a sense of what the policies are on the left that they don't like.
And they're the ones who like DeSantis in the Republican
And they're
primary.
the ones who like DeSantis. The problem is that for Republicans, their share of college educated voters has been dropping precipitously. And they've had a major rise of non-college voters, mainly white, but also across racially diverse, Hispanics, blacks. And so as a result, these are not the non-college folks are much more about like the words, like, I want to be mad, I don't want to go after elites, I don't want an actual politician, and so this, I think, is just a big piece of this, right? There's not a big policy preference. It's also why you see the guns popping really high. It tends to be a lot more sort of rural, non-college whites who care about gun rights as a top line item. So anyway, that's my
This
my
is
thought
just really
on
quick
that.
on the non-college, because I was going to bring this up, but it's somebody else was pointing out on Twitter. I forget what it was. I apologize for not crediting you. But it was both on the non-college, if you looked at the crosstabs of this poll, and on the independents, where all of the more vibesy stuff rated higher. Right, and I do think this is another thing that people forget about what Trump did, is he brought in these people who were disaffected. They
That's
weren't
right.
traditionally Republican,
Non-traditional voters.
Yeah, they do not care about Ukraine. They do not care about the Social Security cuts. They do not care about, I forget what the other third issue was on there, and they do not like this, sense that the culture is moving away from them, which is the stand-in for the woke, right? And so how do you appeal to that?
Well, and so here's the Achilles heel for DeSantis, right? And so if the people who like you within the party are the party elites,
Yes.
but the entire party, its posture is anti-elite, how do you make the sale by having the smarty pants, college-educated Republicans tell the rubes with the Cletus voice that they're wrong and they should vote for DeSantis?
One way that they're doing that,
right?
One way they're doing it is something that me and Sarah have been saying. I don't know if you've seen this, Sarah. They're trying out this, Trump is the establishment. There's a new MAGA establishment, right? Which is what I was just like, you guys better beg me and Sarah a bit. But that's not going to work. It just doesn't. It doesn't smell right. Like
while we're here doing a little accountability, I would like to say to Sarah that I think we can comfortably blame her and all the Never Trumpers for DeSantis' decline, because as you say, it is his power was in who hates him.
Right.
And we had this, we spent like 2 months with the whole, in Democratic and Never Trump circles with people talking about, is DeSantis worse than Trump? And people like us, I think, basically won the argument that no, DeSantis is not worse than Trump. Trump is much worse. And you have said you would happily vote for DeSantis over Trump. Blah, blah, blah. And so what have we done? We've proven that we don't hate DeSantis as much as we hate Trump.
Yeah.
And therefore, Republican voters have no choice but to support Donald Trump.
I'm just telling you guys. Somebody go look at the day Jeb Bush came out with his endorsement of Ron DeSantis and mark it against the decline.
Jeb's name out of your mouth.
And you mark it against his precipitous decline in the polls. And I also got to say, like, watching the National Review and like some of these other DeSantis stands, like, they're just fighting so hard. And like watching
please run, please.
I mean, you are our great hope. I mean, Eric Erickson just like can't do enough. And you know what? These guys, they tried this before and they lost. Now, I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen this time. I'm just saying I don't know that they realize that when they fight this hard, that like if you just look at the comments, they're all just like, yeah, you rhino Never Trumpers. And I'm like,
you do not lump me in with Rich Lowry, random commenter, 69420. Anyway, the one other interesting thing about all this, though, when you talk about the place where they kind of have a point, the DeSantis people, about Trump being the establishment, we've been saying that Trump is the MAGA establishment, is he has co-opted these people to the swampy people to a big degree. It just, he doesn't seem like it to the same degree that DeSantis does. And that's all a vibes thing. But, Sarah, in the green room, you were mentioning this political article that just came out about, I know, I have worked very closely with both Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles, who are running Trump's campaign. And maybe to a different extent with one than the other. There's a high competency level there. Okay. Yeah. There's a high competency level. They have wins under their belts. And like they're running a real effort, and this Social Security thing in this poll is a prime example of this. It's I thought they were overplaying their hand a little bit on the cutting Social Security thing. No, it was last place on this, the cutting entitlement. So anyway, what was your take, like reading that, kind of take out on Trump's operation vis-a-vis DeSantis?
I mean, I just think it's been really evident that Trump this time around has a plan, and it's honestly a plan. I mean, you want to talk about accountability. If I went back and listened to us right around like November, December about Trump getting in, I'm sure I was saying like, this is ridiculous. What is he doing? Like so stupid. But you know what he's been able to do is now he's been able to set the pace of this race. He's been able to be in it a long time. So now a bunch of people are like, well, why aren't these other people in? Which opens them up to all this like, well, will Ron DeSantis really get in? I mean, Trump's been running this campaign. Trump is locking up endorsements early. He's making personal calls. And this professionalized operation is doing things like, oh, is Ron DeSantis in D.C. today? Boom, we're going to unroll all of our Florida endorsements. And that kind of thing has been devastating to DeSantis. And so and Trump has not had a real, just think about all the Jason Miller, Corey Lewandowski. I mean, I guess Kellyanne is like a real pro, but like, I would say broadly speaking,
even LaCivita and Susie are both more. If you go back to the 2014 era and say like, who would you recruit to run a campaign? Both LaCivita and Susie would be ahead of Kellyanne.
And I have to really question what inside them died that is allowing them to run this campaign. Oof. But from an actual, just a totally morally neutral competency standpoint, they're running a really competent campaign. And DeSantis, so I saw the article because Eric Erickson tweeted it by basically being like, when DeSantis gets in the race and shows everyone he knows what he's doing, this media narrative is going to fall apart. And I was like,
the media narrative being that Trump has a better campaign operation.
Yeah, and that DeSantis is kind of flailing.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that the last month has been as much of a Trump acceleration as it has been a DeSantis deflation. And I think that the DeSantis deflation is not because he's not in the race. I actually think it's because people are taking a look at him harder now, and instead of being like an overlapping Venn diagram with Trump, like as a separate entity. And I don't think he's standing up. Yeah, I just don't think. I think people are like, I don't know that I like him that much.
Well, and the only component that he has as his argument against Trump is electability, and that is plummeting because, again, we're seeing his retail political skills and his lack thereof. We've seen, again, he's going to have to carry around the abortion ban, the 6-week abortion ban, and his constitutional carry with him everywhere he goes, like luggage or herpes. And
genital warts is what I compared it to.
These guys, like Andrew McCarthy from National Review, who this week wrote that Trump can't win, period. Here, I want to read just one sentence, right? I am as certain as I am writing this that Donald Trump will never again be elected president of these United States. How does this guy have a job writing words for a living? Like, I don't understand who would pay for that, because I'm sorry, at the absolute worst, Trump might have a 30% chance to win the presidency should he become the nominee. They're even starting to see this in the polling. We had a poll pop this week that showed Trump running 5 points ahead of DeSantis against Biden.
We've seen both sides of that, but
we have seen both sides of it. But DeSantis doesn't run all that much. When DeSantis is running ahead of Trump, he's not running 10 points ahead, right? It's 2 points here, 4 points there. And this idea that DeSantis is infinitely more electable than Trump is an absolute mirage, and voters are going to see that. If your entire argument is electability and you can't prove the electability thing, and your only response is, well, in 2020 or in 2022, he won Florida by 19 points against Tomato Can Charlie Crist. I'm sorry, that's not going to be an argument that closes the sale with voters.
Yeah, the real danger of the electability argument is that it goes away as soon as polls start consistently showing Trump even or better with Biden. Yeah. Like, it can just go away that way.
I think it goes away even more just by innate reptilian sense that DeSantis doesn't feel more electable.
Yeah,
I actually think that's hurts him more than polls. Just one last thing on the YouGov poll, JVL. I would love your take on this. The thing that Republican voters care the second least about is supporting Ukraine. Do we have to give my Kevin a little love on the next level here?
Totally.
For going against the voters here? What was your read on that? Did he just, was it like this vestigial, like, anti-Russia thing from the back of his brain from being a college Republican that just came out in the moment and he wanted to wag his finger at the Russian reporter, or was there something more at play?
So he's asked by a Russian reporter about this, and he basically walked in and said, "No, we do support aid to Ukraine, and what what your country has done there is shameful." And I forget his exact wording, but it was very good statement. And this is how Republican foreign policy used to be. The problem is that Republican foreign policy now lives inside the Democratic establishment, and it's a weird thing, and a lot of people have trouble getting their heads around that. But if you are like a person who wants strong, robust American foreign policy that is going to take care of our alliances and protect our interests in the world, your only home is in the Democratic Party right now. And every once in a while you'll get a flash of this from Kevin McCarthy or Mitt Romney or Mitch McConnell, and they'll say the right thing, but they don't have the power within their caucus to execute on that, because that's not what the Republican voters want.
Very mad,
right? I mean, this is. Because the problem here is not the politician. The problem is the voters. So polls can only be as good as the voters will let them be.
And Trump.
But because Trump brings the voters, right?
If Trump disappeared, let's just be real. If Trump disappeared, if he had the heart attack in my dreams, then the voters' view on Ukraine probably wouldn't change that much. It would tack a little bit back because leadership matters, triangle of doom, et cetera, et cetera. But it would be kind of like how things were, which had its own set of problems, but kind of how things were on immigration, like in the 2000s, where the party wanted tough immigration, but the leaders kind of went against what voters wanted. I think that's what would be happening on Ukraine.
Tucker would still be Tucker, right? Tucker would still be Tucker. Marjorie Taylor Greene would still be Marjorie Taylor Greene. That beast has been awoken. Yeah, I just don't think it goes back to sleep just because Trump dies.
I want to go deep in the heart of Texas. I want to change topics a little bit. I've got a Texas potpourri for everybody. I spent like 3 days driving across Texas. There's a good, I wish I pulled it up. There's a good poem somebody sent me about how you wake up in Texas and you go to sleep and you're in Texas yet. I couldn't get the fuck out of Texas. It was a very big state. Sarah, why don't you pick here? We've got Colin Allred announces a Senate race, and we've got the shooting, and we have the very interesting response by the Texas legislature to said shooting. Which one do you want to cover first?
Yeah, I'm most mad about the shooting. So
let's go there. We can end with Colin. We can have Colin afterwards. A little dessert. So I assume everybody's seen this, but just very quickly, there was a undocumented immigrant that killed a family, which I didn't even realize until after Greg Abbott put out a statement that was also full of undocumented immigrants with an AR-15 over a dispute. The family was upset that the guy was firing off his AR-15 at like 11 p.m. and it was kind of loud, and they had an 8-year-old who wanted to go to sleep, and so he killed them all. Abbott, his response to that was to like attack the illegal immigrant family, kind of, in a statement, and then the legislature had a very interesting response as well about, not this time it isn't door control, it's we're going to train our 8-year-olds in battlefield combat. We want them to be able to suture a wound. So anyway, Sarah, what?
Well, I just have one. I'll let JVL do the 8-year-old suture the wound thing, but it wasn't that Abbott came out and like criticized the family exactly. It's what he did was he made clear in his statement they were going to offer, I believe, a $50,000 reward to catch this guy who had killed a family of illegal immigrants. And he made sure that we knew that the people who had been murdered in this gun massacre were immigrants. And it was one of those things that is unnecessary unless what you want to do is dehumanize people in that moment, to make sure that people understand that he wanted to signal to people that either we didn't have to care as much, or that it was important to designate them as such, that they were illegal. And I gotta say, when people have been massacred, to sort of make sure that you are getting in that sort of finer political point, it felt so gross. It is so, because the point is to rob people in that moment of their like dignity and humanity. And it's so unnecessary. Like, you just don't need to do it. Like, it's one of those things that like you only need to do it to demonstrate that you're that you like live in a moral rot.
Yeah,
is how I feel about it.
Yeah, I it's tough. I mean, like what Abbott said is not tough. It's an interesting situation. One of my observations driving through. So I drove through Arizona, and then you go through El Paso, and then kind of up through. We were probably 100 miles from the border. I went to Marfa, and there's like a highway, an immigration highway check going across I-10 that you get stopped, and there's like immigration patrol everywhere. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's like you see all. I know the Republicans always are going to the border like, we need more border control, we need more border security, and it was the alarming thing to me just on both fronts was like, we have a lot of border security actually already, like very significant, and it's a significant problem, of course. So I'm not saying we don't necessarily need more. Maybe we do need more, but like it's just I make that point because it feels so central to the lives of folks down there, right? Like when you're living through this every day, that like it is not an accident to make that demonization point.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it is like this is a way to position himself, continually as being like, I'm strong on this. And if you don't read conservative blogs, like there actually is like Abbott's got criticized by a lot of right wingers, like in order to try to butch up DeSantis, talking about how like DeSantis was doing Abbott's dirty work for him by sending immigrants. He had to go to Texas to send the migrants to Martha's Vineyard because Abbott wasn't doing his job, et cetera. So like I just don't know what it's just so far afield. Just going back to our original poll question, it's just so far afield, JVL, from like how W and Rick Perry, even as governors of that state, like dealt with this. I don't know.
I mean, look, I would say the political response, but really the human response when anything happens that's bad, when there's tragedy, is to be immediately sympathetic for the victims, right? And the idea that in that literally that first blush of reaction, that one's impulse is to label the victims, to make clear as to which side they're on, as opposed to, like, when a tornado goes ripping through a town in Arkansas, the initial report on it does not say the town, which voted for Donald Trump by a margin of 82 to 12, was decimated by these horrible tornadoes and 3 were killed.
Great point.
That's not how people react, because if you react like that, you're a monster, right? That is an inhuman way. And habit is, and I really wonder if that was a calculated statement of his to improve bona fides, or that's just a reflexive view of the world. And I don't like it. One of the things I like about Biden is that is not how he, reflexively interacts with the world. I'm sure look, I see ghouls on Twitter from, I'll do my both sidesism, but you will see ghouls who react to things like the Arkansas tornado or something by saying, yeah, well, those people voted for Trump and they don't believe in climate change, so F them. And I think that's monstrous and horrible. And but those are randos on Twitter, and this is the governor of the second most populous state in America. So it's not equivalent, but the impulse is the same, and it's bad, and we should be slinking back away from that.
The other thing banging around on this is totally endorsed out of Hundo P, by the way. The Texas legislature, in response to Uvalde, so back in, I think it was 2019, 2019, next session, there's a Democratic legislator that was part of a comprehensive kind of package about how to deal with school shootings, had a piece of legislation that required, there to be like battlefield trauma kits in schools, which is a horrible reality, but seems to make sense. There's also another provision that had seventh graders had to be trained on how to use these. Pretty gross. Again, very sad that is a sad reality of America. There's an amendment right now here. I want to pull this up, which is Republican Ken King has proposed an amendment Republican Ken King has proposed a bill that pay public school teachers and staff up to $25,000 if they're willing to carry a GAT at school. So that's one response to this. The other one, though, is an amendment which has the student enrolled in campus in grade 3 or higher will be trained. There'll be a bleeding control station required. Must contain the following supplies: tourniquets, chest seals, compression badges, bleeding control bandages, space emergency blankets, etc., etc. We're going to be training third graders on how to use this equipment. That's my question. What? How do we square this with the? Not that they're trying to square it. Like, on the one hand, it's like third graders cannot read about the penguins, the gay penguins, but we have to teach them how to use tourniquets approved for use in battlefield trauma care by the Armed Forces of the United States. That's a direct quote from this bill.
Yeah, and this is a Democratic messaging bill, and it's psychotic. Like, I understand that it's meant to shame Republicans, right? That's the whole point of it. It's not going to pass.
Are you sure?
Yeah, are you sure?
I mean, I'm not sure. I she's introduced this bill 7 times now, I think. Okay. She keeps reading. I believe this is a messaging bill meant to embarrass Republicans, and I don't like it because it's maybe you trigger the cons with it, but also, if it were to be put into practice, it would not help anybody. It wouldn't save a single life.
Is the $25,000 bonus for teachers to carry guns at school a messaging bill?
I don't think so.
That's
I think
our serious response.
Seriously, right? That's the serious response, which I I don't know how teacher pay scale works in Texas, but I'm pretty sure that you don't get $25,000 in most schools for agreeing to coach the softball team or something like that, right? I mean, teachers get a pay bump for opening. It amazes me that somebody would think, yes, we should give a teacher 5 times the bump for carrying a gun day to day than we would give them for being involved in an activity which helps further the prospects of the kids. Like, it's just, I don't know, these people are so unserious, these Republicans, with this door stuff. And I've said this before on the show, I really wish that they would stop being cowards and just have the courage of their convictions and say, it's like the First Amendment, and I'm sorry. You're going to have kids killed in schools every year because we cannot infringe on anybody's right to carry a gun, and you people should just live with it. Just say that. Just say it.
So I saw this thing the other day on the internet, and it was this dad talking about the fears he had for his daughter. Things like getting sexually assaulted, things like, being massacred in school by guns. It's like, you know what has never been scary to me, because I've never heard of it happening, is like a dude being in the women's bathroom that's transgender and like having that be, like a scary thing. Like, he's like, this is just like not the thing that I'm scared about. I'm scared about all of these other things, because he's like, why would I be scared about this thing? I'm scared about this other thing that happens all the time, and that is a big cultural problem. And the solutions to them, like, and yet somehow we are made to, like, I hear Republicans say all the time, like, well, they're very afraid of, there being trans kids in the bathroom. Like, that's
litter boxes.
Is this what we should be afraid of? Is that how? Or are we structuring our fear properly? I think maybe we're not.
Yes, I mean, the interesting thing, I was just pulling this up to make sure I had it right. The Democratic state reps. This is, I mean, it might feel like a messaging bill, but like she seems genuine. She gives a lot of interviews about this bill and thinks that this is what's needed. I guess I understand the frustration of a mom, who's like, oh, this is something that we need, and you're in the face of, you're in these legislatures and they're coming up with all these solutions, but it's pretty insane. The question is, so we've got Colin Allred, who announced today, just a little bit before we taped it, we had a great interview with him, JVL and I did for the Sunday Next Level podcast, which you should go back and listen to if you missed it. How does somebody like him navigate all this without getting into Beto land, right? I think this is the really big question, right? Is there an opportunity for a Colin Allred to engage on these kinds of issues in Texas, where you have a governor that's just grotesquely demonizing immigrants? We have a 5-week abortion ban with a bounty on it. You have these, like, you want to incentivize teachers to carry GATs. Like, some of that stuff's popular in Texas, some of it's less popular in Texas. Sarah, I want you to put on your strategist cap, since you weren't in that interview with Colin and might have a little more clear-eyed view on it. Like, how can somebody like him engage in that stuff without getting Betoized into just getting Biden voters, right? Because he's going to have to get a couple Trump voters if he's going to beat Ted Cruz.
A couple. He's going to have to get a lot.
Decent amount. And Trump won by 5.5. So Trump won by 9 in 16, 5.5 in 20. So it's still a significant win, but the trend line is the other way.
What did Cruz win over Beto?
So I have all this right in front of me. If you want me to tick down,
tick through it,
because this is it's very uncomfortable. But I can make an optimistic case for you as to why I think Allred has a chance to win. In 2018, Cruz wins re-election by 2.6%. He runs 5 points behind Greg Abbott in that race, which is amazing.
That's a horrific Republican year. Just as
this is a bad Republican year. But here, what is interesting to me is that 500,000 Texans who voted for Abbott turned around and voted for Beto, right? So this is what I'm looking at, is the differential between Cruz and the top of the ticket. Okay, Abbott much more popular in Texas than Trump. So Abbott, even in a bad Republican year, gets to 57% of the vote, I think, 52% or 56% of the vote. In 2016, Trump gets 52.2%. In 2020, he gets the same, basically, a little bit less, 52.06.
But there's a big difference in that gap is that there is all of the people, and there's like a 4% Johnson, I don't know if McMullen was on the ballot there, right? Like that all of those people essentially go then to Biden, right? Like, so so Trump has about the same ballot share between 16 and 20, 52%. So you're going to have to cut into that, you're going to have to cut into that 2%.
Cut into that, right.
But the Democrats already basically picked up, that, third party vote from 16, which cuts it to 5.5.
Yeah, but can I just say the thing about
please.
Allred's ad that I think, so how does he not descend into Bedouin? There's a couple ways. And I think he's doing it in his ad. It's a very good first ad. But one of the things he does...
I had a couple nitpicks, which I'll get to.
Okay, but I thought one of the things he did most effectively was the contrast with Ted Cruz, right?
Yeah.
Like the biggest opportunity is to make people hate Ted Cruz more than they hate you. The problem for Beto is he moved into enough of progressive land, and because the libs were so excited about him and because he was jumping on tables, he turned off a lot of people who were just like, you know what, I don't really like this whole shtick, right? And it started to feel shticky. And he also took on guns as head on as you could possibly imagine. Like he was right, and so, and he was, I remember him, like he was dropped the F-bomb, play like whatever. I think this guy, big guy, football player, has some real star quality, and Beto had that. But I think if he runs just a little, like goes hard at Ted Cruz, the Cancun stuff, every time I remember the Cancun stuff, and I must be like this for Texans, You're just like, oh. And his idea that Ted Cruz doesn't care about Texas, I think can really resonate. I think that is good. And so I think being less of grabbing all the progressive issues and making them his issues and instead making it a contrast campaign with Ted Cruz, I think that's effective. I thought that ad was doing that.
So this is what he does, I think, and what he is clearly going to do, which I think is so interesting. He's creating a permission structure for Republicans to vote for him. He's not running against evil Republicans. He's not saying that, like, we got to stand up for justice and protect democracy. What he said to us on the Next Level was fascinating to me. He said, I'm in Texas and it feels like we have one senator. Because anytime there's a crisis for Texans, it's John Cornyn who shows up to help us and not Ted Cruz. In presenting that contrast as a sort of like, hey, I'm a Democrat and I would not have run against John Cornyn because John Cornyn shows up to do the job. But this guy over here, he's not here doing the job. He's on Twitter and he's in Cancun and he's taping his podcasts because he's a conservative influencer and he's not working for Texans. And I think that's where Colin Allred has to live. And I think in a neutral year, where all he's got to do is run a couple points ahead of Biden in Texas. I think it's close, but I think it's doable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to get back to Sarah in a sec. I have two nitpicks, and I want to follow up with Sarah on something about the ad. I thought the ad was really good. I thought he was good with us on the Next Level. Again, focusing on the absentee Ted. What he added in the video that we didn't talk about was he focused a lot on the working class stuff, which I think is important. Going back to that, he's got to do well with non-college Hispanics. Got to, right? And like immigration is not the issue, right? It's pocketbook stuff, and it's not seeming too far out there on cultural stuff. So the two things is, the one is I loved the part of the ad where he talks about how he wants to be a good dad because he didn't have one. So good. The thing about how he was the first congressman to take paternity leave, I'm for it, but like
it wasn't great.
It's a little cringy. It's a little cringy.
Yeah.
I'm for it. He should do it. I'm for it on the merits. This is just a political criticism, right? Like you want to. It makes you seem a little Whole Foodsy, right? And he's got to lean in on Cracker Barrel, right? Like he's going to get the Whole Foods people. Doesn't have to worry about that. And then there was just one little clip about Ted Cruz wanting to ban pornography from schools, saying teachers are spreading pornography, which is again probably ridiculous. But but I looked at that and I was like, what's wrong with that? Like parents don't want pornography to be in schools. So there's a lot of good stuff out there, and I think this is my question for you, Sarah, is like how how do you resist the urge to kind of jump on all of these things that like would land here on the next level and with other people that go to Whole Foods like I did yesterday, but just engaging on the cultural stuff in areas where there's broader agreement so that he can try to bring over that last 4%.
Yeah, can I tell you, this is why oftentimes even though I think it's fantasy politics, I always think like Republicans really need to run, like lapsed Republicans really need to run for these seats. And the reason is that they're native to the tribe of Republicans, and they would understand that you do not boast about being the first congressman to take paternity leave. And and it's just one of those things that like you can't see it if you're part of a different tribe. It's sort of like one of the things I always think when a reporter sends me an email and they have their pronouns in the email. I'm like, that's cool, but you didn't tell me your pronouns really. You told me your politics. And like they don't understand like somebody who is, or just like so if they're, I just always think, I don't think about them sending it to me, but I think about that reporter sending it to try to like a Republican to try to get them to do an interview.
Yeah.
Right. And how immediately that Republican's like, I can't trust this person. This person is not someone, this person is outside my tribe. And so, I don't know. I always kind of want to get these guys like a Republican coach to be like, because he throws around all hat, no
different
cattle.
Email signature for Republicans. For Republicans, when you're asking for a comment, under your sig line, it says, my pronouns are fuck around and find out.
Yeah, but like you don't have to do that. Just don't commit just don't do the thing that signals lib.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Two other thoughts I have. One is just because sometimes I think we get lib listeners are like, but you need turnout stuff and you have to motivate the base. You have to,
that's what Ted Cruz is for.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
Like Beto, I give Beto credit. Like Beto and Stacey Abrams are both like the people that you send in on the front line of the battle to like go down, and they were sacrificial lambs, okay? And Beto got close. He was 2.4% off. Stacey got close the first time. Both of them did worse the next time.
And they showed that you could fight, that there's a fight to be had, right?
Yes, and so credit to them for showing that those states are winnable, those states are worth competing in, and they brought and registered people and brought them into the system. Those people are in the system now, okay? They're voting now. They're engaged. Great job, Beto. And Stacey, the way to get people to go to the polls in 2024 is going to be Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, and Ted Cruz, two of those three people, right? That's how you're going to get the people to the polls, is that these people are insane, okay? And that they want to end democracy. And the January 6th stuff was great. I'd love to see a cops contrast from Allred, being pro-cop versus Ted, resulting in the death of police officers with his January 6th protest. So, like, that is how you motivate people now. The other thing is, I do think that there's a way to go on offense on the cultural stuff. I do. And it's hard, though. But I think the immigration thing is probably a loser, unfortunately. But I think on the gun stuff, there's a way to do it. There's a way to engage where focusing on Ted Cruz not caring more about his podcast stats, caring about those kids, focusing on some of the, very popular, the 21 plus age thing that I always hit on. I think that they can engage in that. On abortion. Obviously 5 weeks bounty. This is a winner in Texas opposing that bill. So I do think that there are ways to do it on the cultural stuff. It doesn't mean you have to like run a milk toasty Mark Penn no labels campaign or whatever. That's not what I'm arguing for. It's just you got to be smart about it. I don't know. Any other deep thoughts, JVL, from our
Are you taking a leave of absence to go run Colin's campaign?
No, I'm not. I'm not doing that. I'm retired from that.
No.
And so I appreciate people I'm
Good,
always happy.
I need your content.
I'm always happy to give my 2 cents, though. For people that want my opinion. I mean, I don't know.
happy to give
I was running Jeb's
logo design notes.
I was running Jeb's comms campaign, though, and we finished in last place and also managed to tank DeSantis, apparently, according to Sarah. So I don't know if you might not want my advice. So take it for what it's worth. We've had a very long show, but it's been pretty good. Any final thoughts? Any final little words of wisdom, bon mots? We do have a secret show where Sarah discusses her, personal life, what's happening, little gossip, things behind the scenes. So if you're not a Bulwark Plus member, you should be signing up for that so you can hear Sarah and JV on the secret show. I'm not on the secret show, so I will tell you that if you notice all my clothes are wrinkled and you think that it looks like I'm wearing dirty things, I've had 2 broken washer and dryers delivered to my house. 2. We're waiting for the 3rd delivery in this new home. So I am like a old maid in the 1700s, washing Toulouse's underwear in a bucket.
Do you have a washboard, the metal washboard?
Yes.
Hey man, I have some actual advice because our washing machine crapped out recently.
Okay.
There's this thing called Rinse. There's like Rinse where they will. It's like Uber Eats, but for clothes now.
Yeah.
And like you like.
And I can give them my personal effects, even the
You
undergarments.
just give them all your stuff, and they will like they'll take it in a big bag, and then they'll wash it, and they'll bring it back folded in a big bag.
I feel okay. Maybe I'll do that for shirts. I feel
that sounds amazing.
I feel weird about giving people my undergarments. Does that not weird you out a little bit?
I mean, if you want to wash them in
doing
a
it.
bucket, fine. I don't. Yeah.
Just pretend it's robots.
I appreciate the advice though. Rinse.
Yeah, it was called Rinse, and I found it on the internet when I was like, "This is, whatever."
Rinse is not sponsoring us, unlike our glorious sheets.
Yeah,
which
they're
I
not.
do.
But I just, it's the thing. I also, if people are in Washington D.C., I have an event coming up with Diane Rehm.
Ooh, really?
And I do.
The golden voice.
And it's a fundraiser, and so if anybody wants more information on that, there's details that I'm not going to give out here. But if people are in DC and they want to come see me in a salon with Diane Rehm and have some cheese and whatnot, then email us and I'll get you the info.
Well, that sounds okay. You should probably come to New York instead. You should probably come to New York.
You should also probably come to New York.
See JVL in his element, around people, getting touched. Oh, JVL loves that.
Just going to sit there and smile while they rub my face.
And you can watch Charlie berate me for my lack of knowledge about 1940s musicals, which somehow as a heterosexual man, he seems very well versed in and very passionate about. It'll be wonderful. Right there on the
our buddy Molly Jong-Fast.
May 18th. There are still some tickets left. We have a good number coming already, though. It's going to be a good crowd of Bulwarkers. So, and I might go to the gay bar after. No promises. So, if you want to get rowdy, I don't know about Sarah. We might relive our heyday. She's smiling. She's interested. She's interested.
Every time you talk about going to a gay bar, I have a very specific image that pops into my brain.
From 2008?
From you and I, young you and me.
I behave differently in 2023. I think you'd enjoy it. Sebastian, you're not invited. He just invited himself. I was trying to get Sarah and our guests in. Maybe Sebastian will come as well. You'll get to see him. And this has been great. It's been such a great show. Not long at all. I do a great job in the captain's chair. JVL will be back in charge next week, though.
You do well. But my Diane Rehm thing is on the 12th. Just FYI.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just realized I forgot I hadn't said that.
Diane Rehm on the 12th. New York on the 18th. Colin Allred's running for Senate. Go Nuggets. We'll see you on Sunday for a Sunday show with Larry Wilmore. He's awesome. Already taped it. See you then.